Hey everyone, it's me, just checking in because we have obviously had a sort of a strange end to our term here as we get to the end in terms of having to cancel a bunch of classes. Again, I'd mentioned, I think in our last face-to-face meeting, I'm involved with a search committee that's making a faculty hire in the philosophy and religion department, and so I'm the outside person as part of that committee, and so it's a long process and we get 100 applicants, but as it gets towards the end, you have the finalists here and they come to campus for a visit, and those days are scheduled, and it's pretty much, you're just totally blocked out for that entire day. There's a campus tour, an interview, a teaching demo, another interview. There's just the whole day. And unfortunately, it's completely inflexible for me. I have to be involved with them, and I can't finagle the dates or the times or any of that kind of stuff. So we've ended up missing a week, basically a Monday, Wednesday, and now to accommodate our last candidate that we're bringing in as part of the search, I have to cancel class on Monday, April 22nd. So we'll have missed basically 3 in a row, which is too bad in any time or at any time, but especially right at the end where we're trying to sort of wrap things up and draw things together. It really throws a wrench into the situation. We've had obviously the online component to our class that helps to keep things together a little bit. You've been hopefully doing the reading for the class and still doing the work online. So we haven't lost touch completely, but it's not an ideal situation. So part of this announcement is just to alert you to the Monday cancellation, and that'll be in Blackboard, and I'll send an email, or will have sent an email as well. In addition, you'll find info about our final exam listed in our course here. It's an in-class essay that you're writing, and I've provided basically the question here in the guidelines, so you can start thinking now, really, about preparing for yourself an outline and what kinds of things you want to talk about. And so it's one of those essays that is it's informal in as much as you're writing in the I voice from your personal experience. The question you're asked here is just, what did you learn in English 22-21, the course that we've just done. But it's still meant to be a fairly organized essay in the sense that you're laying out these things you feel like you've learned, developing paragraphs within the body of the essay, and then concluding. So it's formal in one sense, but it's still fairly formal and academic in another sense. The main thing that I really want to stress, and that's talked about here in the course, is that the things that you feel like you've learned may be fairly overarching, like idea level, abstract sorts of things, but I really want you to, and I'm requiring you to include direct quotation and direct evidence within each of those body paragraphs to kind of elucidate that bigger idea that you want to talk about. So you're quoting from the book, from works that we've read. So obviously it's open book. I don't expect anyone to have memorized passages. And again, you have the opportunity to create for yourself an outline and bring that into class, so you can really think this through in a fairly structured way before actually having to write it out in class. And really what I'm looking for is, to be perfectly honest, just to allow you the opportunity to have this moment of looking back and thinking of all the ground that we've covered and what are some of the most interesting, things, ideas, people, texts, whatever, that we've encountered that have really captured your interest. So I like that you have to do that. Oh, I gotta go do something. But the thing that I'm sort of looking for is your engagement with what we've done throughout the course. So if you develop your 3 body paragraphs, I don't want to see quotation from just the last 3 things that we've read, or everything from Milton, or everything from just one particular section of the course. I really want to see evidence that you've kind of taken a moment to think about that bigger picture and all the things that we've talked about, and the ways that a certain work as part of a literary era will respond kind of against what had come before, or is an early form of something that will come afterwards, or revisits a particular theme in the 21st century that we'd seen in the 7th century or 17th century. So really this kind of broad thinking, but still grounded in specifics. So if there's anything that's difficult about this essay, it's really that balancing act between the big ideas, but then making sure that you particularize those with evidence from the text and from the course and from the actual work that you've done. So that's actually pretty straightforward, but again, it is incredibly hard to do if you simply sat down at 10 a.m. on our exam date and started from scratch. But if you do a little planning, it's actually fairly straightforward. We obviously have limited time as well, so you really do have to prep some things to bring in so that you know what works you want to talk about, what quotes you want to use, the ideas, and that kind of thing. There's also a fun, I hope, extra credit opportunity here, which I think a lot of people can benefit from for a variety of reasons, that will hopefully work in the context of our class, our essay writing exam here. Who doesn't like a good party? And we've just been reading The Dead and then Catherine Mansfield's The Garden Party, so I sort of have parties on mind. But I thought it would be fun if everyone could bring in, or those who want to participate, could bring in something to share with the class, food-wise, a dish to share, but that's somehow related to or, connected to some work or idea or author or whatever that we've talked about as part of the course. So I leave that creativity, up to you. And it's a fairly low stress extra credit. It's not like you have to write a whole nother essay or do some big project or whatever. So hopefully people will embrace this and we have kind of a nice last time together in our final exam. We will have one final class meeting, which will be the Wednesday, the May 1st, after that Monday canceled class, in which I will try to sort of wrap things up. We'll look at Derek Walcott, who was our final author for that week, and he does in fact provide a very nice bookend to the course, because a lot of what he talks about and the form that he writes in and the sort of national context that he writes out of remind us very specifically of Milton, where we began, this other epic poet writing out of this small island nation, which England was at the time and still physically is, but grew to be a global power, at least at one point in its history. So anyway, we have these two seemingly very different poets at the beginning and end of our course, but in fact they provide a really nice set of parallels that we can think about. And a lot of what Walcott brings into the course, just by virtue of his existence, his cultural identity, it actually challenges a lot of assumptions that are the premise of our class, like a British literature class. If Britain was an empire whose influence reached around the globe, Canada, Africa, India, the Caribbean, which is where Walcott's from, if you were to define a British literature, all of a sudden that could be almost anything from anywhere. And if you have a particular place that was British at some point during its colonial history, but then became its own nation or was occupied by a different European colonial power, does someone writing with that history in the background also somehow fit within that larger question or picture of British literature? So this is part of what our study of Walcott brings to the fore. Again, this really nice place to end that in some ways challenges a lot of assumptions we may have made from the very start. But again, this is all stuff that I'd like to cover in class and wish we had more time to do. So from your end of it then, obviously keep up with the online work in terms of the covering Woolf, and then the Walcott unit is actually, if there's a unit to miss in terms of the face-to-face part, the Walcott part is great, or not great, but there's a lot of material in Blackboard on Walcott. Maybe a product of the age in which he lived. There's just a lot more media available for some of these authors now. But anyway, there's lots of material to get into in terms of Walcott, and actual footage of him reading and interviews and his Nobel Prize in Literature acceptance speech and just all this great stuff. So, and I could get a sub for the class. That's one of the things that's an option that's open, but I personally don't feel like it would be useful to drag everybody in on a Monday for those 50 minutes just to have somebody like click buttons so that you guys could watch what is actually here in Blackboard anyway. So I didn't feel like that was a good option. So I guess the favor you can repay for that didn't come out right, but you know what I mean, is just to make sure you're still staying plugged into the class, working through the online stuff, doing the work in the units, and then making sure that you show up for that last Wednesday class, having read the Walcott stuff and looked at it online. And we'll try to sort of conclude things as best we can, even though we've had this sort of fractured end to our course. Okay, so in addition to that, just keeping up with the unit work, obviously you want to begin to look at the final exam and begin to think about ways of approaching it, and then of course whether you'd like to take on the extra credit option, the yummy extra credit option that's available too. Of course, if you have questions, be in touch with me. Yeah, that's about it. Otherwise, I'll see everybody on Wednesday, May 1st.